In this video, I want to show you how to work with the Mod Podge. And this is if you're taking pieces of magazine or newspaper or anything else that you would like to add to your background for your transparency portrait. So I just quickly kind of went through a couple magazines and I found a couple of pieces that I thought were kind of cool. I thought they went together, textural. That would be fun to do. So I'm going to set these aside right here because these are going to go on top. Now you can cut and glue down and Mod Podge down, but I actually think tearing is a little bit more interesting because you have your tear edges. So I might take this and I might go ahead and I'm going to tear and just kind of rip some pieces that I think would be kind of fun. And they don't have to be any particular size. Actually, I would say that don't go too small, don't go too large. I would kind of keep them medium in size. But really, that choice is up to you. You're the artist. You get to determine that. This is a thicker piece of paper, so this might have a slightly different tear. You'll notice that there's a little bit more bold here. But I thought these two went well together, and I thought this could be a good background. All right, so now that I have a couple of these torn out, I'm going to start to Mod Podge them down. As I mentioned before, there's two different types. This is a gloss, which means it's going to have, when it dries, it's going to have like a sheer gloss like finish to it. It's going to look a little shiny. This one is matte. This Mod Podge is kind of a little bit like glue in that it's very tacky, it's very sticky. So what you're going to do with the Mod Podge, you're going to use a paintbrush that's similar to this. And I'm going to do the matte one right now because you've already seen the glossy. So I'm just going to work with matte. And actually, if I'm working with matte, I'm going to close this glossy up because you've already seen the glossy if you were watching the first video. So I'm first going to take the Mod Podge and I'm going to kind of paint my paper. I'm putting a very little layer of glue. Now, you do not need a lot of this. Very, very, very thin. So just enough to kind of get that tacky. I would place this, my first couple ones, I would place over the edge. It's okay to have it go over the edge. And then I'm going to paint on top. And so by painting just a little layer on the bottom and then tacking this down and putting a little bit on top is going to have it stick. Now if I go back to my music note one that you see here, what I want you to notice is that on this one I did not go right to the edge. But what I did do, and here's the example of the clean edge, what I did do is I Mod Podged over the edge of the paper, and then when I was done and it was all dry, I went back and I just trimmed right along the edge of the paper to remove the excess off. So that's how you're going to do this. And so you're just going to keep going and you kind of decide. A lot of times when we're doing this, we just kind of start sticking it down. Sometimes you want to plan out what you're going to do, and other times it's just a matter of kind of putting it down there. This paper is a little bit thicker that I'm using, so it might take a little bit more to stick it down. And maybe I need to put something on top of it, maybe one of these on top of it to help kind of hold it in place. And so you're just going to you want to work kind of in similar sections. And I might keep the torn edge because I think that's the more interesting edge on my paper, and maybe make the flatter edge go off the paper. And so in doing this, I'm learning something. I'm learning that the thinner magazine paper is going to work a little bit better. And this paper that I took was actually from the back side of a magazine. So if you're familiar with magazines, you notice that the cover and the back of the magazine for some magazines are a heavier cardstock than what's inside, and so that's why this is maybe not sticking down. So maybe my lesson learned here is that maybe this paper might be a little bit too thick. So I'm going to use maybe a little bit more of this. And I want to cover the whole paper. So when you're done and you have finished your background, if you have used Mod Podge or watercolor, this is going to go on the drying rack to dry until next class or until you need it. So that is how you're going to do the Mod Podge. And so I'm just going to kind of keep going here. Now, once this is all done and it's dry, once this is all done, I shouldn't say dry, but once you have your base imagery down, then you could go in and you could take your traced piece, and I would not put this down because don't let this touch the Mod Podge. Please, please, please do not let this touch the Mod Podge. But I might hover this over so I can kind of see how I want this to be placed, and do I want it going this way or do I want it going this way? Which way do I like best? And then I might decide that I am going to put down, where did they go? Here it is. So I might put down some words or images that maybe reflect me. So when I put this down, I might decide that I'm going to place this, just going to add a little bit more here. I might place this people up in the corner. So it's not, so in other words, when I go to paint my portrait here, and then I go to lay this down, the people is not going to be partially stuck or hidden underneath the paints where I can't really see what's happening. So if I kind of lay this down, figure out where I want this, I think I'm going to put the people right there. I do consider myself a people person. I like to hang out with friends. I do like my alone time too, but I would say that generally I'm a people person. So I like to have people. Now, one of the things I just realized is I just put this little people down and I don't have anything underneath it. So I'm going to just quickly lift that up and see if I can't tuck that in underneath. So now when I lower it down, it'll work. So you definitely want to do your base of whatever it is you're going to do first before you go adding any little details like this. So that is how you're going to do the Mod Podge. And then once this is all dry, or once you're done with Mod Podge, two things you have to do. One, make sure that the Mod Podge is closed. And number two, please, please, please make sure that you rinse this brush out really, really well. If the Mod Podge stays on here and it dries, like it said, it's like glue, it will ruin the brush. So put some water in your hand, run some water in your hand, and while the water is running, a slow trickle of water is running in your hand, kind of go in and do one of these things while the water's running and get all of that Mod Podge off of the paintbrush before you put your paintbrush away. Like I said, you'll ruin the brush if you don't. So when you're done with that, you're going to place this on the drying rack, and then you can start painting your portrait. When you're ready to start working with this again, and you're ready to start putting the two together, you're going to need to take your paper here, Mod Podge paper, you're going to have to turn it over, and then you'll take some scissors and you'll just trim. Okay, so that's how Mod Podge is done. So I hope some of you choose Mod Podge. It can be really cool, it can be really fun. I will say it takes a little bit longer than the watercolor or the other design. So if you are strapped for time and you are realizing that you only have so much time to get something done, going with something that's a little bit simpler, or a painting, or something that you know that you can do fairly fast might be a better decision for you, depending on how much time you have and how you know you work within the room. So have fun, and can't wait to see what you come up with.